3 a.m., you should be asleep. But you're not. And that's the thing, you knew you wouldn't be. You knew it at around midnight, when the familiar feeling began. There's no noise, no thoughts. But there's a shift in the atmosphere of your chest cavity, a tightening of invisible muscles, a dull roar that has no source, no off switch, no identifiable cause, no story you can think of to justify it. You flipped onto your back, rolled over again, stared at the ceiling for a long time. It wasn't giving you anything new. So you picked up your phone, put it back down, picked it up again, and here we are. Let me preface what I'm saying by telling you that I'm not going to ask why. Because honestly, I think I know. There isn't anything necessarily. See, that's the thing. If there was something keeping you up, something you could identify and wrap your brain around, you would be able to solve it, to change the outcome. But this feeling, this hum that permeates your entire body, it doesn't have a form. It just exists. And that existence is what makes 3 a.m. so profoundly terrible compared to any other hour of the day. Because during the day there's distractions, noise, other people moving around, the tangible feel of life happening to counteract what you're feeling. But at 3 a.m. none of that matters. None of that exists. And all that's left is you. And the humming. And the question that sits beneath the humming and can't quite become words, but is literally always there. Let me tell you a story. About a woman living in Jerusalem about 2,000 years ago. About this woman who felt that humming. Who laid awake at night, unable to sleep, for no reasons she could put her finger on. And what she did one night when she decided to stop laying there. Don't go, stay with me. You must see Jerusalem at Passover, because that changes everything you think about this story's context. 40 to 80,000 people lived there year-round. That number ballooned during festivals. People came from Galilee, from across the Jordan, from Egypt, from Rome. They camped out on rooftops, in courtyards, outside the city walls. Traffic into the city became a literal river of humanity days before the festival began. Merchants, soldiers, priests, whole families with young children. The sick, the desperate, the hopeful, the just plain religious. It was noisy, smelled of animals and cooking fires, and too many humans pressed into one small space. Below all that lay the grid of Jerusalem being Jerusalem, an occupied city. Romans, temple authorities, the daily grinding abrasion of an empire sustaining its rule over a people it hadn't quite succeeded in breaking. She lived in the lower district of town. We don't know her name. Most women of her class and position didn't make it into historical texts by name. They're noted only in relation to others. Wife of, daughter of, friends of. But she was there. Woman lived then. In that city, in that century. In every city, in every century. Which is why I'm telling you about her. By all accounts, she had a good life. By no means was she wealthy, but she had enough. People who loved her. A role to play in her community. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't sleep the way you have those nights before something big is happening to you. Not that anxious excitement kind of can't sleep. Something worse. See, some of you out there know what I'm talking about. You've lain in bed listening to your own pulse kick in the silence, because sleep feels like an alien concept. Nighttime, to you, is not rest. Nighttime is anxiety-ridden work. The work of staying quiet while your body screams itself into half-standing. Let me tell you about your nervous system. Your nervous system has one job. One sacred biological purpose. To keep you alive. Your entire system angles in on this one task by calibrating for threat. Part of your brain, primal, nonverbal, deeply ancient, is asking itself one question over and over. Is there danger here? Is there danger here? Is there danger here? Most of us, most of the time, are totally fine. Our alarms few false positives. Our behavioral left brain says to our bodies, it's okay. Chill out. Nothing to see here. And we sleep. But some of us, listen. For someone whose threat detector is set to the highest interval, safe never feels safe enough. Some of us grew up with guards so vigilant, they basically manned the gates 24/7. Not because they were trying to. That's just the level the thermostat was set at. That woman, when she closed her eyes at night, her nervous system screamed back. She tried to tell herself it would be okay, that she was safe where she was. But her mind didn't listen. Nothing to fill the silence. Nothing could distract her from the moment her eyes slipped shut. Because that moment signaled for her nervous system, it's dark. You should be scared. She grew up this way. Don't remember when it started. In her world, there was no vocabulary for what she'd felt. There was no concept of the nervous system. There was no word for anxiety as a physical phenomenon. There was no container large enough to fit this. Sometimes this body of hers learned to do something, and then it keeps doing it even when it wants to stop, and that is not her soul failing her. If something was wrong with you that nobody else can see, well, the default assumption was spiritual. You were dirty. You were sinful. Broken. She had heard that. Said about herself. Not to her face, such things rarely are. But there it was anyway, arriving at her face like these things always did. And here's the thing about chronic anxiety. About where it gets under your skin. The injury it causes is not just the lack of sleep. It's not the feeling of not falling asleep either, or the chest tightening, or the hypervigilance, or your body locking into fight, even though you're truly safe mode. It's the story you tell yourself about it. Something is wrong with me. 4 words. Quiet words. Persistent words. Words that cut more deeply because you say them to yourself, in your own voice, instead of hearing them come from elsewhere. Something is wrong with me. Why do I feel things that other people don't feel? Why can't I relax the way everyone else can? I have so much to be grateful for, and here I am torturing myself thinking about this. There must be something wrong with me. With my brain. I am broken in some intangible way that I will never be able to identify, and never be able to correct, and never will be able to explain to anyone, because it doesn't have any physical manifestation that they'll believe. Psychologists call this the second arrow. The first arrow is the injury itself, anxiety, insomnia, feeling like you're going to burst. The first arrow strikes. It hurts. Yes, that is true. But what comes after? Rational thought usually fails here, because immediately after the first arrow comes the second. You judge yourself for being injured. What's wrong with me? Why do I have to feel this way? The second arrow is far more painful than the first, though, because the first injury is something that happens to you. The second one? You hurl that one at yourself repeatedly all night, every night, while everyone else sleeps. She had both arrows. Internalized both arrows so deeply that for a long time she stopped knowing which was which. The anguish and the condemnation she felt for experiencing the anguish. They became one. Night 3 of the festival. She slept on her mat. The city quieted to its night self, distant dogs, the murmuring of voices far below, centuries-old stones creaking and settling in their foundations. And then there was the hum. That old, constant, nowhere in particular hum. She turned over. Once more. And then, you've had this moment too, something shifted. Not closer to sleep. Toward action. This wasn't a decision. Rather, her body hit a point past which staying put was just something it would not do anymore. She sat up, drew her cloak around her shoulders, crossed quietly through her house, into the street. I want to linger on this action for a moment. Getting up. Because when you think about it, there's something philosophically interesting about what she did. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't have an agenda. She wasn't walking toward comfort, toward resolution, toward anything feeling better. She was walking toward motion, which is choice of a sort when your alternative is staring at ceilings ravaged by your own nervous system. 2,000 years later, Viktor Frankl would write from inside a Nazi concentration camp that there is a space between stimulus and response. In that space is our human freedom. The stimulus was the hum, the exhaustion, her body telling her it needed her to do something besides lie there. The response, the one she typically made, the one anxiety almost always requires of us, was stillness. Remaining in bed, hoping. She did something else. Put one foot on the floor. Then the next. It wasn't dramatic. No one was there to witness it. Most of the city was asleep. But she rose from her bed. And rising, with its defiance of the gravitational pull back toward anxiety and insomnia, is one of the very few things that can hack into the tight loop of the hypervigilant nervous system. Because your threat detection center was built for caveman-style problems. It floods you with adrenaline so you can fight or flee. And if you choose neither, if you lay there instead, that adrenaline just pools in your body, heightening everything. Movement is the antidote because your body is doing what your alarm system evolved it to do. It's also why sometimes at 3 a.m. the psychologically healthy choice is the one that feels least healthy. Get up and walk. So she walked. Down narrow streets and over stones so worn from thousands of years of human feet that they were perfectly smooth. Most families had already extinguished their lamps, but hers was still lit. Behind her, dogs lifted heads without bothering to growl. Once someone snored softly from a doorway. She knew where to find him. The rabbi from Galilee. Most people in that Jerusalem neighborhood knew that week where he was lodging. Word of his arrival had come days before he arrived, and his arrival itself had already caused a kind of disruption. Teaching loudly in the temple courts, making the Sadducees uncomfortable, drawing crowds that caused the Roman authorities to watch him, well, as Romans watched anyone who gathered Jewish crowds. People talked about him, quietly, during the day. Jesus as though he were a rumor, and wonder and worry lodged in the same breath. She hadn't sought Jesus out until that night. She was too anxious for that. Going to synagogue full of people? Sure. But crowds made her hum louder. New environments made it louder. The idea of putting herself somewhere unfamiliar, to see a man she barely knew in hopes that he might be able to help her with something she couldn't yet identify, felt like the quickest way through city streets to exactly where her nervous system did not want to go. And yet here she was walking toward him, her feet carrying her forward, not deciding, simply walking, because the decision had been made at a level of instinct beneath her conscious mind's awareness, and her feet were just carrying it out. The gate clicked open. She paused outside it. On the other side of the gate was a small courtyard. A fig tree in the corner, leaves barely twitching. A low bench against one wall. An oil lamp by the doorway into the house, dimmed down low, so it made only a small circle of warm light in the dark. And on the bench, a man. She knew who it was as soon as she saw him. It wasn't recognition. There wasn't anything to see. He was turned away from her. It was something harder to name. His stillness. The way he sat, not hunched over like most people did when they sat up at 3 a.m. alone with themselves, but patient, alert, intentionally still in a way that looked anything but obligatory. Awake in a way that didn't look like trying not to fall asleep, but like something else wholly. Like he was sitting with whatever woke him, because to do anything else was not an option. He looked up at her when she pushed past the gate and stepped into the courtyard. He didn't blink at her. Instead, he looked at her like she were someone he had, in some low-key and unconcerned way, been waiting to see. She hesitated. Every impulse in her being told her to turn around and leave. She was a woman barging into a man's private space in the dead middle of the night. She had no invitation, no introduction, no sufficient explanation she could offer before being asked what on earth her explanation was for. Coming to Jesus at 3 a.m. probably wouldn't get her burned at the stake like some women in her position would, but it would get her something equally damning. Embarrassed. Jesus said, "Come sit down." 3 little words. And I want to linger on those 3 words for a second, because Jesus means something in them. He didn't ask what she was doing there. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't ask how he could help. Each of those questions might have been asked with the kindest intentions, but they all do the same thing. They make your presence at that person's doorstep conditional on your ability to provide them an answer. You have to justify your existence there, and then maybe, if we're lucky, you can sit down. But Jesus didn't say any of that. He said, "Come sit down." Which means, why you're here doesn't matter. You came. And that's enough. Sit down. Think about that. Think what it would be like to knock on someone's door in the middle of the night, literally poured out before them before they even opened the door, and for them to invite you in. Not because they thought you'd survived your nightmares and now needed them to prove it. Not because they suspected you had some deep existential crisis they could give advice on. Just because you were there and you asked for solace and your messenger didn't look any less exhausted than you felt, and Jesus always invites the weary in. She sat down, across from him, at the other end of the bench. The lamp stood between them, its light almost. Somewhere in the dark, a rooster crowed. It was too early, those roosters sometimes are. Like they forgot when they were awakened, and decided to just keep at it until someone told them to stop. Jesus said, "You couldn't sleep." Statement, not question. And she said, "No." Jesus nodded. That's all he did. He listened to her. He didn't immediately rush past her statement to solutions. Didn't begin instructing her on what to do, or how she could handle it better next time. He just received it. "You said something and I heard you. It is. I want you to pause there and feel how much of a gift that is. Especially if you live with depression or anxiety or panic. One of the loneliest things about it is how absolutely unheard that feeling is. Most of the time, when you try to say it out loud, another loud thing happens on the other side of your confession. We want to help people. We want to fix them. So when someone says, "My brain hurts so much," our first instinct is to problem solve. Give them ways to battle it. Tell them about how we experienced it once too, and whatever cheerfully distracted us that one time won't work for you. But have you tried? Friend, please stop. They don't need your advice. All they need is some actual space to just say it out loud and not be rushed past it. Jesus sat with her in the dark, with her pain, at 3 a.m., while his disciples slept in somewhere and Jerusalem itself yawned around them. After a moment, he said, "You've been doing that for a long time." She said, "Since I was little." He said, "I know." She looked at him. He didn't mean it magically, though perhaps a little bit that too. He meant it the way you mean it, when you see something in someone's face that you've seen in hundreds of faces before. The despair underneath the despair. The particular flavor of exhaustion that only comes from years of fighting something that won't see. She said, and to say it aloud took something from her. "I don't know why it won't stop. There's no reason for it to stop. My life isn't even a bad life. I have people who love me. I have enough. I don't know why I feel this way." This sentence, "I don't know why I feel this way." This is, I think, the core sentence of anxiety. The one we whisper to ourselves in the dark. And it is also the sentence that begins the trial. The internal interrogation that asks, "But if your life is fine, how can you feel this way? If everything is okay, then you are the problem." Here's what neurology is beginning to understand about that sentence, about that trial. It starts from a false question. It assumes that your feelings need to match your external reality. That if your life is objectively fine, then your nervous system should know it and respect that fact. But your nervous system only knows what it's been taught, early and often and sometimes without you even realizing it, to feel in situations like this. If it learned to feel afraid, even loosely, even not from one specific traumatic experience, but just from the cumulative impact of growing up in a world that wasn't fully safe, or a childhood that wasn't fully nurtured, or a life that somehow taught you that vigilance was the way to stay safe, then your nervous system keeps feeling afraid. Years after the original danger has gone. Years after you've moved away from whatever abuse trained it. Your nervous system doesn't know your life is fine now. It only knows what it learned to expect. Jesus said, your body learns to stay awake. Sometimes it learns that really early, before you're capable of choosing whether you want to learn it. And then it never unlearns it. Not easily. Your body will stay awake long after it should. Long after the danger is over. She looked at him. No one had ever articulated anything that bored so cleanly into it. No one. Not her priest as a child. Not the healer she saw once. Not anyone in her life who loved her enough to try. They had attempted, she knew they had tried their best, but no one had ever said anything that spoke to the inside of the thing rather than simply around it. He was saying something fundamental. About the way it works. About how it happened to her. That it wasn't her fault. That she hadn't failed. She hadn't angered whatever God was out there by being wired this way. Your body learns to do things, just as bodies learn to do things. And sometimes those things become hardwired. Especially when they start as children. She looked at him. Her body hadn't broken. It hadn't failed her. It had adapted. And here's the thing about adaptation. Adaptation is not a flaw. Adaptation is your body's intelligence hard at work. It saw the environment it found itself in and figured out what it needed to do to not get killed in that environment. The problem isn't your adaptation. The problem is when the environment changes, but your body can't quite keep up. When you outgrow the conditions of your childhood, but your nervous system hasn't received the memo. The philosopher Albert Camus once wrote that the absurd arises out of the conflict between our desire for things to be knowable and the universe's refusal to satisfy that desire. But I think there's another absurdity, a quieter one, the absurdity of your nervous system stuck in the past, of who you are now and what your nervous system reflexively believes about safety. There's a gap between who you are and what your body is programmed to feel. And in that gap is where chronic anxiety resides, pulsing, waiting for the night that will confirm it's true. That night when it will definitely try to kill you, and you will have to stay awake to survive. Jesus named that gap. Cleanly. Without shame. Without contempt. You stayed awake because you learned to. She said, how do you unlearn it? He said, you tell it that it's okay to sleep now. Over and over. Because it learned to stay awake over and over, so now you have to learn to sleep over and over too. He paused. Then, you also stop asking yourself why you're waking up in the first place. Stop asking why you're waking up. Stop asking what's wrong with you. Because something is happening. Something true. He'd been talking about it for minutes, and he hadn't skimmed over what was happening. He'd met her there. Fully. He'd named the experience, but he hadn't placed the blame. He said, this is what your body is doing. This is why your body is doing it. It isn't fighting because it wants to. It's fighting because that's what it learned to do. The philosopher William James wrote that the most revolutionary discovery of his time was the fact that human beings could change their emotional lives by changing their mindset. Not by denying the feelings, not by forcing themselves to be happy, but by shifting their orientation to the feelings themselves. By sitting with the anxiety and saying, I see you. I know why you're here. You're not incompatible with me being okay. You are remembering what I survived. That's what Jesus offered her with those words. Not healing. Not even the promise of healing. Relationship with her own suffering. At some point, and this is my favorite part of the story, the part that blows my mind every time, he told her something about himself. Not as a lesson. Not as wisdom imparted. He just said it. The way that things sometimes are said at 3 a.m. when normal boundaries of behavior are briefly suspended because you and the other human being have been awake long enough that your social locations for the day are briefly collapsed into two people trying to help each other suffer less. He told her that he too had nights when he did not sleep. That sometimes he had come out here, to this courtyard, to this bench, because the load of him, of what he was carrying for himself, but also for his friends and for loved ones and for the world he loved so dearly and for what he knew was going to happen and for every single horrifying glimpse of the future that he got. Sometimes the load got so heavy that it was not a load you could put down and sleep with. Listen to me on this. He was arrested 3 days after this night. He knew it. Miles had already been planned by the time this night took place. The chief priests were plotting. Judas was already quietly handing him over. The cross was not a shock to him. He knew it was coming. He woke up with that knowledge every day. He ate with that knowledge, taught with that knowledge, discussed with his disciples who still didn't understand why he was willingly walking towards something so awful with that knowledge. He was staying up with his inability to sleep because he had a lot on his mind. And so he sat with this woman who was staying up because her own body had been conditioned to stay awake and watch since she was young, and he witnessed her wakefulness. Named it true, valid, allowed, neither of them failing their spiritual disciplines or unable to encounter God before sleep took them. Both of them just sitting with the hard reality of their lives. He said to her, "You cannot let the night judge you for how you spent it. I want to offer you an idea. A little bit philosophical, maybe, but I think helpful. Human beings are one of the only creatures on the planet who exist with a conceptual relationship to consciousness itself. We live within our experience of life. Not just experience life. We experience ourselves experiencing life. And this self-awareness? It is the root of every beautiful thing we are capable of as human beings. Story, morality, love bigger than animal attraction, hope, dreams of the future, and empathy for our past. Every single thing that feels bigger than just survival. But it also gives us 3 a.m. There is a Buddhist teacher named Thich Nhat Hanh who referred to the second mind as the mind that watches the mind. He said that the relationship between the two minds is where all of human suffering actually resides. Not in the actual painful event. In the narrative the second mind constructs to tell itself about the painful event. Jesus was telling her that night, your darkness is not the enemy. Your staying up is not the enemy. The stories you tell yourself about your darkness and your staying up. You getting out of bed and judging yourself for being awake? That's the leverage being forced against the load you are already carrying. Put that story down. Keep the night. The night will not waste you. She stared at the lamp for a moment. The tiny flame. How motionless it was in the still air of the courtyard. I still feel lonely, she said. And then Jesus did something I think about quite a lot. Yes, he said. You do. Not, oh, you're not lonely, you're never alone. Not God is always with you. Not the platitude, the kind true heart person would say, the speech she had likely heard a million times, with actual solace nestled inside it. But not that speech. Not then. He simply said yes. You are lonely. And sat with her. I want to say something about loneliness at 3 a.m., specifically, because I think that's its own thing. Inside loneliness there are edges. Some are sharper than others. Loneliness during the day hurts, but it has soft edges. Noise around it, activity, other people, things moving, the potential for overlap, for reaching out and maybe touching someone else, for something to happen, for you to do something, to at least feel like you could. But when you're lonely at 3 a.m. it's absolute. There is nothing, no one, everyone is asleep, and you are awake in the silence that sits between you and every person who loves you. A silence that cannot be bridged at this hour, not without disturbing them as well, not without having to justify yourself, not without becoming needy. which you are suddenly and desperately, but you don't say that out loud because they're asleep. So you lie in that silence, in the knowledge that you are the only person awake in a world that has quietly, collectively decided to be unconscious for several hours, which makes your own aloneness feel unique, which makes your wakefulness feel like a punishment, which makes you lonelier. When you're lonely at 3 a.m., you're not just lonely. You're lonely in the particular way that only 3 a.m. can make you. Jesus recognized it. He let her feel it, did not attempt to talk her out of how she felt, offered no words that would diffuse the feeling, simply sat with her, in her loneliness, acknowledged it. Irvin Yalom was a psychologist who dedicated his life to studying suffering. He spent years interviewing people who were dying in order to learn about what scared us, what thrills us, what makes us vital. And he concluded that while we fear death, what we fear most is not being reached. Humanity's deepest fear is not death but isolation. That we will exist, but nothing we say or do will ever matter enough to anyone else to keep us from dying completely alone. And the only remedy for that fear, he discovered, was not talk. Not words, but presence, standing together in the same room, not telling someone that they will be heard, but hearing them, sit with them, in the dark, without leaving. Jesus sat with her, in her loneliness, and did not speak. Not of companionship, only companionship. The sky was beginning, very subtly, to relinquish its black. It wasn't morning, not quite, but the 3 a.m. darkness, that absolute, thick feeling, was transforming into something else. Something that wasn't night, and something that wasn't quite the herald of morning. Crow somewhere, cock-a-doodling with purpose. She'd been sitting there for hours. She pushed herself up, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and realized she didn't know what to say. Pleasantries, thank you for your time, I best be on my way, belonged in another context. I will be okay, she started. He regarded her, his face calm. He wasn't rushing to reassure her. He wasn't cushioning it. You are not broken, he told her. You think you are. You're not. You will rest, he continued. The part of you that stays awake trying to guard you doesn't know it can stop sleeping. It never knows to stop. You have to tell it though. Every night. On and on until you believe me. She nodded. She walked back through the arch. The street was paved stone. The city was stones built on stones. Her bones were her bones. But she walked home differently. It wasn't that the panic didn't claw its way back. It did. It wasn't that she now had been granted some cure. She hadn't. But two things were separated that had for so long been soldered together. The experience, and the condemnation of herself for experiencing it. He unraveled them for her, held each thought in his hands and said, "This is not the same thing. One of these things is true, and the other is a story you built on top of it." She could have the experience, and leave behind the ruling. Life after that is different. Same nights, same darkness, whisper of morning, but different. Here's what I believe happened to her in the end. It wasn't a cure. It wasn't restful sleep from that night on. I think she went home and laid down and still heard the hum some nights. Still felt the watchfulness return some nights. Still had nights that were just hard. But I think her center had shifted. What I know about the link between self-compassion and anxiety, this is neurological, not soft science. When you are in the grips of anxiety, your nervous system is in threat response. Cortisol floods your system. Your heart rate rises. Your vision narrows. Layer self-judgment on top of that. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just snap out of this? And your nervous system processes that self-judgment like more threat, which causes more cortisol, which ramps up the anxiety, which gives you more judgments about yourself to make. Psychologist Kristen Neff has been studying self-compassion for 20 years. She's found that the single most useful thing you can say to yourself when your nervous system is dysregulated is whatever you would say to a loved one who is suffering. Not to dismiss the suffering. To simply say, in your own voice, to yourself, "This is hard. This sucks. You are not broken. We all have this thing. This is what it feels like." He told her that. Jesus told her that. With words. With his presence. At 3 a.m. in a courtyard in Jerusalem during the most panic-filled week of his life. He gave her words her inner voice couldn't give herself. Not criticism. Not condemnation. Just, "I see you. I see what happened. I know you're trying to protect yourself. You can fall asleep now." And she walked home and went to bed. And when the hum started up in her mind, and it did. Oh, it did. For years after that night, she had something new to offer it. Not silence. Not self-recrimination. Something closer to, "I know what you're trying to do." I know why you learned to do this. You're doing this to keep me safe. You can let go now. Some nights the hum listened. Some nights it didn't. And on the nights that it didn't listen, she wasn't failing. She was just doing it again. That's what this looks like. Not a moment of healing. Practice. Sitting gently with yourself again and again in the dark, night after night until... If you're reading this at 3 a.m., I know. You scrolled too far down. The ceiling feels familiar now. You grabbed your phone and didn't know why. Tell that part of you it can rest for now. Remind her that she is safe. You know the part of you that's still listening, still scanning, stalking the darkness with eyes that won't fully open. It's part of you that got scared a long time ago, scared enough to learn how to protect you at all costs, to do whatever it takes to keep you alive. You can fall asleep again. You don't have to reason with it tonight. You just have to tell it once. Even if she doesn't listen to you. Even if you have to sit with her and say those same words again tomorrow night. And the night after that. You can sleep now. I know you don't believe me. Not yet. But you are safe right now. Right this minute. You haven't ruined the night by losing sleep. Sleep sounds good, doesn't it? Good night.